ridiculous. I mean, this is the 48th game of the season, fans. If you don't have your signal straight by this time, I mean, you open up with a fastball 9 times out of 10.
You think you can do this now? We're going to get your manager out here and get you out of this game.
We haven't started the ball game yet. Maybe it's time for Baxter to get himself a set of glasses. They ought to take him to the optometrist tomorrow to get him examined. His heart is evidently not the culprit. He doesn't seem to believe it either for some reason. I don't understand what's going on here. Absolutely don't understand. Looks like Baxter's ready. He's looking in, and he's still nodding no. Still nodding no, and I don't know what he's doing. He's still nodding no. As if he can't see or something. And time is gone. Now the home plate umpire is going to go over and talk to management, I believe, or they're going to put him on base. It's good news for the refreshment stand. You folks sit down there in the refreshment area. You stay in line. We haven't started the ball game yet.
How long like to play this game?
Since you were a little late, it depends. How many numbers?
What? Hey, you don't get back behind the plate. And what's he giving you? What does that mean? What? You don't know what it means? Just a minute, I'll throw you on you out of here. What does it mean? What does this mean? You're going to throw a pitch tonight, or are we going to stand here and talk about it? Are you going to play ball? Yeah, I'm going to give you one more chance to have this fella play ball. Otherwise, we're going to run him out of here. Well, we're going to forfeit. All right, let's go. Let's go.
Okay, we're still waiting the first pitch. We're going to time called again. And now the umpire again going out to talk to the pitcher. And he pointed, he's out of it. He threw Baxter out of the ballgame. He threw Baxter out of the ballgame. One of the most unbelievable things in the history of professional baseball we're seeing right here.
My name's Peter Spunch, and I do the Candid Camera show. You're on Cadid Camera now. There's the camera up there taking your picture, and you are one of the nicest guys we've ever caught on Cadid Camera, although you're shaking like a leaf. We want you all to smile because your exposed are on Cadid Camera.
When it was all over with, and they're watching the tape up there in the booth, Alan Front was literally rolling on the floor. It was that good. And Steve went out of his mind. Alan Front was the umpire. And he threw that pitcher out of the ball game, and he hadn't thrown a pitch yet. And the kid said, he can't do that. He hasn't even thrown a ball yet, and he's thrown him out of the ball game. He can't do that.
What we did worked out, worked okay. And that was fun. Broadcasting the games was...
At 44, 2020, Kathy has the key.
You remember that all, Pete?
Oh, yes. Very fortunate that Skip didn't come out with one of his famous "goddammits." He was very close. He gets upset quickly.
What was your reaction though? I mean, you're watching the game and you're saying, what's going on here? I mean, did you ever...
Never entered my mind that it would be something like that.
Yeah.
No. No doubt about it. It was well done. No, they handled it well. I felt sorry for the pitcher. He was so befuddled out there. That was a fun night.
Did he win that game?
Yeah.
What I did, I made a copy that you can
Thank
have,
you.
and also
I
last
lost mine.
last there was a couple of sessions ago, we had an audio tape that we turned into a video. Pat Doherty, and
Great.
Pat talked about that game, and so I got that also on your tape. I won't bore these guys with it because they've seen it once before, but so you'll have both.
Great, I appreciate it.
You're welcome. But it's you were part of it, and
Yeah, we sure were.
I think when you made the comment about staying in the concession line, that is the greatest line I've ever heard.
Once in a while.
Great footage. You don't even, you can't prepare for that.
No, I know. We got lucky, I guess. It was fun. I wish we were still doing the games, to be honest.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
We had a ball down there when Bubba played.
Tell us, and I guess in one sense, you don't need any introduction. We'll let you roll. What we've been doing is kind of gathering a lot of information on professional baseball, and I don't want to necessarily limit Pete Hubbell because you've been so expansive as far as the things you've done here in Jamestown, but you could maybe spend a few minutes on maybe how you got connected doing your first professional game down there, and maybe some reminiscences and some funny anecdotes that may have occurred at the stadium dealing with professional baseball, and then we can open it up to everything else you've done.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, I've been very fortunate. I had an idyllic childhood, brought up as the son of the #1 sportscaster in Buffalo. I had sports instilled in me since, I guess I made my first spring training visit when I was 3. I don't really remember that, but my dad assures me that I was the hit of the show down in Florida. And we went to ball games. My brother and I went to ball games from there on in. He'd take us up to the roof of the old Offerman Stadium, and what a great ballpark. That place was just wonderful. You just felt like part of a family down there. Everybody was, the same people went to the games, sat in the same seats, and the nice part about baseball in those years was the same players stayed in town for more than just 6 months and then a recall. AAA baseball in those years was, as good, if not better, than some major league teams playing ball now, because the players stayed there. And a guy like Hank Sauer played in Syracuse for 6 or 7 years before he ever made it to the major leagues. And it was just fun growing up. And I was not only a big fan, but I played a lot of baseball in my youth, including municipal ball and high school ball, and until I got hurt, I played at college. But my first professional broadcasting experience came in Batavia. As far as baseball is concerned, it was kind of an unusual introduction to it. I saw your tape there with Jim Roselli talking about Frank Larry, and it just brought back to mind. I was in the station WBTA in Batavia doing my show, and a young man came in, a clean-cut looking young guy, and he says, I'm here for, I'm a new member of the Batavia team. Was a pirate farm team then, known as the Trojans, from Eaton, Yale, and Town Division, Batavia Trojans. And he said, I'm here to start the season in another week with Batavia. Just thought I'd be kind of looking around. So I said, well, hi, I'm the sports director, and we'll be broadcasting opening night. And my name's Pete Hubbell, and he said, hi, I'm Steve Blass. So, and Steve Blass later, of course, on to a very illustrious career with the Pirates, and then all of a sudden lost his control. It's one of the more unusual stories in sports. He obviously has gotten over that and has become a baseball broadcaster, but he had a wonderful year in Batavia. And also on that team, a guy by the name of Cito Gaston. He was known as Clarence Gaston in those years, but obviously, again, much success in his future. So that's the way it got started for me broadcasting baseball in Batavia at what used to be MacArthur Stadium. It's now Dwyer Stadium, and of course a brand new Dwyer Stadium named after Ed Dwyer, who was the president of Batavia Baseball Club, the Russ Dietrich of Batavia. And Ed was just a wonderful person. anybody who ever met him. He was dedicated to the team just like Russ is around here, and he made baseball go in Batavia. So that's the way I got started doing ball games. Here in town, it's been kind of on a hit and miss basis. I wish it were more hit than miss because I really loved spending the summer there at the stadium and doing the games. You get to know the kids, and then to see them progress. I think that's the rewarding part of broadcasting baseball on a Class A level, is to follow them in the future and see what the success might bring. And the problem now is with what team. It used to be you'd start them off as, say, an Expo, and they'd remain Expos, but not so. And that's the disturbing part to me of professional sports. The Marlins a prime example of that. I just hate what's happened down there. They bought the team that won last year, and they sold the team that isn't going to finish out of the basement maybe this year. And I guess I'm kind of a pessimist now about the future of professional sports. I wish it weren't so, because I love all sports, as you said.
How did you get, tell us about how you got started with WJTN.
Okay, it was, my career in broadcasting was, began in 1959, and this would be the end of my 40th year. I had a very brief stint at WESB in Bradford before I was in an automobile accident and sidelined for a couple months. And I later went to work for, as a matter of fact, Cy Goldman owned WGGO in Salamanca when I went to work for him in 1959. We started some play-by-play there on a tape delay basis. It was a sunrise to sunset station, so we didn't have any opportunity to do high school sports at night. But Pat Carroll, incidentally, was the basketball coach there at Salamanca when I started broadcasting high school baseball, or basketball rather, and he's still officiating around these parts of football and such. But then from there I went to Batavia, much more opportunity to do sports, like I just told you about the Batavia team, and we did all kinds of sports in Batavia. I had become known apparently to JTN authorities, Cy and Carl Willems and people who were running the station in those years. And Dave Hunter was my predecessor here in Jamestown after Max Robinson. Dave was here about 5 years. In fact, I roomed with Dave in Salamanca briefly while we both got going in radio. But when he elected to go to Harrisburg, Dave left here for Harrisburg. I got a call from Carl Willems, and he said, "Would you be interested in coming down and talking to us?" So I did, and we had a very nice meeting in the hotel, which well, those were different studios over there than what we're used to now, but the old hotel. We had a wonderful meeting. I met George Flieger, the program director in those years, and Carl, and we came to an agreement. And by the way, Merrill told me today when I was coming over, I was just up at the station getting ready for broadcasting a game today, and he said, going down to that luncheon, he says, I don't want you to talk about salary or anything like that. And I said, don't worry, I'm as embarrassed as you are. But we came to an arrangement on the job, and I was still working for BTA, and I had tendered, I think it was probably 6 weeks or so before I was due to come down here and relocate. And I got a call from Carl, and he said, would you mind doing a high school playoff game? Dana Lindstrom. Dana was Milt's son, and he was the team manager in those years for JHS. Yeah, and he was the first one. He came running over to introduce himself because he had heard that I was coming down to work in the games, and we broadcast that game. It was the sophomore year of Don Johnston. I don't know if you remember Don, but he and his family all played basketball for the high school. He was the first who later went on to captain the North Carolina basketball team under Dean Smith. So that was my introduction to Jamestown play-by-play, actually in an unofficial basis, but it's gone on from there, and I just loved every minute of it, especially the play-by-play, and that's why I'm still doing it. It's you just meet wonderful kids, and the success of our area teams. Can't say enough about the programs here. As you're well aware, Jamestown High School football, basketball, Frewsburg baseball, Maple Grove basketball, baseball, Frewsburg girls softball. We have outstanding coaches and programs in this area. And believe me, it's a lot more fun broadcasting winners than losers because, for example, yesterday we were supposed to do a game that was a 20-4 final score. And if you're on the 4 end of that, as a broadcaster, it's not a lot of fun. And yet here, obviously, we've been to the States, we've won state championships and had a chance to broadcast from all over New York State in championship situations, and not only just be there, but win. And it's, like teams reaching the Super Bowl, say, well, it's just great to be here. But the ultimate thing, as Buffalo has found out, is winning that big game. And then we had the great years of JCC down in the early 80s. The crowds were amazing, and the enthusiasm, the atmosphere. Boy, those were fun. And we made 4 trips out to Hutchinson, Kansas. Tough weeks, believe me. When you have 8 days and you only play 4 games, there's not a lot else to do except watch basketball and eat. I remember one year I gained 9 pounds, I think, in 1 week. Now, if you guys know Charlie Anderson, who's Gunny's brother, who's a big guy, and he used to go with us. And Charlie's idea of starting the day was to stop for donuts on the way to breakfast. so consequently, I came back and my wife didn't recognize me in the airport. I was about this wide. But again, the success stories down there at the college. They always used to say, the detractors in those years always used to say, well, there isn't enough opportunity for local kids to play at our own community college. And yet when that program ended and local kids took over the program, the crowds went from 2,500, 3,000 to 50 in no time. And if I were asked an opinion, I preferred it when there were 2,500 to 3,000 people there. It was great entertainment and it was outstanding basketball. It's just been a fun career. I certainly have gotten off the track on your question about baseball.
No, not at all.
But,
while you're on that track, though, Pete,
let's talk about anything that comes to mind. Don't let me. Yeah.
You've done it so much and so many things. Do you have you ever sat down with a picking order and said, all right, these are the kind of the top 5 experiences I've had broadcasting that are really memorable?
I guess probably I've touched already on them. Obviously, the trips to Hutchinson, where you're seeing, basically what you're seeing there is Division I basketball with no grades. The kids just can't get into 4-year schools, but the talent level, believe me, is there. And it's a unique tournament in that it's all played in the same arena. They start on a Monday and go through Saturday, and they play 5 or 6 games a day. So you get to see plenty of Division I talent, and the competition is just fierce, and the programs are excellent. That certainly sticks out. Those years in Hutchinson stick out. And obviously, Jamestown's trips to the Carrier Dome, the first year they didn't win, but what an experience that was. And then to go back and, win it, and then win it again. 28 wins in a row is incredible on that level of high school football. I don't know if it sinks in to the average fan how not only how great your teams must be, but how fortunate you must be to get through 28 successful victories in a row. I mean, you need to stay healthy, obviously. Your key players, there isn't the depth factor in high school sports that there is in pro sports and such, and you need to keep those people healthy. And those trips to the Carrier Dome, the atmosphere there was just incredible. And what's impressive, the Maple Grove victory in Glens Falls when they won the state Class D basketball championship. And what brings it to mind is the following that these teams get. I mean, it's incredible. It's a great area, and it's people. That's what this area is all about. It's people, and they're all there. They support. They're traveling with the team. They're turning around when Jamestown scores, and they're yelling at us. And we had a great experience in Glens Falls with Maple Grove fans. when it became apparent that they were going to win their championship game, they turned around, looked up. We were under the rafters there. It's a hockey arena and basketball in Glens Falls, and we were up under the rafters. In fact, I got a little nervous looking over, and they're all chanting JTN, JTN, JTN. We got that on tape. That those are experiences that will never escape me. I don't know. It's just a wonderful area for people, and this goes back. I tell you what, this goes back to the first week I was in town here, and Russ got together at the town club. Remember it well. He had almost every important sports figure in Chautauqua County sitting around the table to meet me. And what more can you say? It's gone from there.
You do something with all this information you've had? You're going to do a little memoirs at all, or sit down with it's more easy for a guy like you who uses voices to dictate this stuff.
It's entered my mind, I can put it that way. I haven't really given it any serious consideration. I've always wanted to write all my life, and even fiction and stuff like that. And so now that I have a little extra time, it may happen, may not. I'm thinking about it. My dad's obviously written a lot, and I guess maybe I get it from him. What a great influence he's been on my life, I tell you. It's just talked to him yesterday, making plans to go to a Bison game. As soon as it warms up, he says.
Yeah.
April baseball down there in North America can be a little frigid. He and my brother went Saturday, and he said, I froze. He's 88 now and doing fine.
Incredible.
Terry knows more about me than I do.
You do?
Yeah, you do.
Did I write your press release okay?
Yeah, you did fine, but you didn't put the 8x10 in I sent over.
I never tried. Give got it.
Yeah, it was editorial cutting is the way it's phrased.
Really send a picture of it?
They used to Post-Journal used to pose pictures, and if there was some reason why one of us from the station was supposed to be in it, they always put us on the end. Yeah, and then chop, oops, something happened there on the way to publication, It's fun, but...
Do you see much, it looked at being funny, but for years, and I guess from the outside looking in, among the media, and I don't mean to be critical of anybody, but it seemed to be that was prevalent, that you might refer to Pete Hubbell, but you'd never refer to Pete Hubbell in a news article in the Post-Journal as Pete Hubbell from WJTN, yet you might refer to 25 other people, Greg Peterson from Phillips Light. It's similar, I don't mean, and I think the radio station probably had this similar...
We used to get along, I think, better than maybe we do now. I know we exchanged in the very early years that I came here. They used to print our radio schedule, daily thing, and we used to mention Paul Harvey's column can be read in the Post-Journal on it when he used to write a column. And I think if there is a problem, I don't really know that. I'm not that high up in either organization, and if there might be a problem, I think it developed more through the news departments than anything that the sports end had to do with. Other than the fact that when it happens, it just filters down to all departments. But I've never had a problem with it. I love to get the guys on the air from the Post-Journal because they know so much about local sports, and we always refer to them as Post-Journal sports writers. Scott and Terry and guys like that are just tremendous. In fact, Terry and I have done I miss him from Sports Talk when they wouldn't let him call anymore. Suddenly the program went all to hell, But I missed his contributions. We did a show for 3 years on high school football each week, on previewing what the weekend would bring. Hopefully a listener might pick a favorite game, and that's why we're doing play-by-play. I've always said that. We want people to come to the games. Obviously, there are many who can't. There are many people who are at homes and they're stuck at home, and I think we provide a terrific service for them. But for those who can get to the game, pick your favorite team and go. You'll see a good ball game. Believe me, it's a lot more fun than professional sports these days. How can people afford to take a couple of kids and in a family of 4 to a ball game? They need to take a loan, stop at the bank on the way to the game. But it's,
Hopefully Jamestown Savings Bank.
of course.
Yeah.
If you're gonna put in a plug, you put in a plug.
Can I ask you a question, Pete? In 40 years, have you seen a great change in the players and the coaches?
Which level are we talking about?
I'm talking-
They might not, but you're just going to be outclassed. You're not going to be strong enough. You're not going to be fast enough. And I think in that sense, the athletes have gotten bigger and stronger, but coaching philosophies probably haven't changed. You still see conservative. Jamestown's a prime example of having success without changing their thinking. And gosh, it goes back all the way to San Filippo and guys like that, where they only one good thing can happen when you throw the ball, and several bad things can happen, and that's their philosophy, and it always has been. Now, conversely, you're seeing a team like Maple Grove, a lot of Buffalo area schools beginning to pass the ball a lot more, and in that sense, I think it has opened up. High school football has opened up a great deal, although you can still win, as Wally's proving with the basics. And as far as basketball and baseball and such, I guess the difference again would be just in physical condition that is better now than it was back in the early years.
How about attitudes? Are they?
Oh boy. I got to say, it's got to be different. It's got to be much more difficult now to be a coach.
No, I wouldn't be a coach.
Much more difficult now to be a coach than it was. I mean, when I was playing, for example, I never would think of pulling some of the, crap that these kids are.
Private stock.
Yeah, that these kids are getting away with. And to me, if I had to deal with that every day on a daily basis, I'd be bananas. I couldn't handle it. And I admire the coaches even more because of that. I think they're so dedicated and trying to do their best to steer these kids in the right direction, and in most cases successfully. Let's face that part of it. But you see some examples. I certainly don't want to mention any names, but some examples of completely wasted talent. Guys that could not necessarily be pro athletes, that's not important, but in life, use sports to your advantage and get the education you need, and so many cases you could point to of wasted opportunity and wasted talent. And that's why, again, I give the coaches nowadays all the credit in the world. I mean, there's a discipline factor that's missing that was there when I was growing up, for sure, and starting broadcasting.
I think one of the best coaches I ever saw, as far as discipline, was Bill Billis of Lackawanna.
Right. Good man. Yeah, there's a good point.
Nobody
Yeah.
misbehaved with him.
No, and he's in a program where he had the potential misbehaviors.
Yeah, well,
And Bill was interesting. He's a superintendent now, I believe, or maybe he's retired. But when he coached basketball, what a program he had at Lackawanna. They were outstanding. But he told me in an interview that he used to spend 2/3 of his practice sessions coaching defense. And he said, boy, if I can get these kids to do that, all they want to do is dunk the ball and race up and down the court and shoot the ball. And he said, this is why I've been successful, because I spend so much time doing it that it takes their mindset off the freewheeling offensive stuff. And then of course, in basketball, you can have an off shooting night, but you can win with defense, no doubt about it, in any level of basketball.
Pete, you showed the movie here. We showed the movie on the Candid Camera. As you did some of the expos games, any sort of nights when you were down there and you'd say, gee, I can't believe that happened, sort of humorous anecdotes, something that, or a player, or Pat Doherty type person. When you say Pat Doherty, does something evoke?
Oh yeah, Pat Doherty is the pub.
We talked about that.
Pat was more darn fun to be around. I'll tell you that. He was a classic, and I'm glad to see he's really done so well for himself, because I really think again, we're talking about coaches who are dedicated to kids, and I thought He was. I thought, you know, he was out to teach these kids something if they were of a mind to listen. And I just loved being around Pat. That was that. I'm not sure, but I haven't gotten as close to other baseball officials who have been here in town because we don't do the games anymore. But he was a classic and really good for kids starting out. I mean, you got to be part everything to be a manager on this level. Kids don't know how to do their laundry. They don't know how to eat. They don't know how to cash a check. They don't know how to live away from home in a lot of cases here. And basically, you're it. You know, when you're at the helm. But I loved it in the Expo years when we had a chance to see. I still follow Andres Galarraga a lot, and those names. I just wish Montreal could have been in a situation to keep. What a team they could have put together if they could have kept the talent that has come through here. You just mentioned all those names of former Expos, and boy, they're making a lot of money now. Too much.
What was your time period of broadcasting the Expo?
We didn't do too many. No.
What did they do? I mean, I know what they're doing now, but did they have broadcasts?
No, not on a daily basis. We do opening day and then some, like a quality market giveaway or a night that was sponsored. They'd pick up the broadcasting. We did quite a few in that way, but nothing on a regular basis.
I remember opening day when they were doing stuff for the resource center and stuff.
Yeah, we would go down. We'd do a remote in the afternoon, and hang around during the game, and I wish we could have gotten more involved. Baseball is it's a tough sport for radio. First of all, a basketball game lasts 2 hours. A baseball game, who knows? I mean, and plus the fact you have rain delays, and you have other types of delays like Candid Camera and things. But baseball is unpredictable as far as will they play, and then how much will they get in before the rain, and things like that. So it's a program director's nightmare to schedule a full season of baseball. And I think they got a little discouraged at our place with the problems. There were more problems than there was availability of making money too. And that's bottom line why we do what we do. I think everybody does that is you're not going to do it if you're not going to give away the time. So
you have a Pat Doherty story, and I tell you why.
No, I don't.
We had Pat. It really was hilarious. We showed. Again, he sent me an audio tape. I'd written to him, and I said, for history purposes, and we show up to you, share your recollections. And so he was wonderful. Very bang, 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 and told the way. And I said, how do you present that to a crowd? So I dug up some archives and put kind of photos and stuff over there. So we showed it a couple of times ago. And guys, we called certain people. I said, you really got to come and hear this because it's just too good. But afterwards, what I'm going to do as a thank you to Pat is show him our product, our video product, and I'm going to interview the guys who are there. So I want you guys to tell me stories. So, from Riggs to Terry Kellogg to others had Russ, had various quips and sort of Pat Doherty stories. So if you have any, people
I wish you would have warned me in advance because I could have given it some thought, but I can't really come up with anything now that would be arable.
I think Pat in the pub was probably the best thing.
Well, yeah, we had many a good time down there.
Do you want to, what's your feeling about Ron Frederick's resignation, and who would you like to see as the new coach next year?
Boy, you're asking a tough one. In that sense, I think Ron did an excellent job considering, well, obviously he had one super talent in Maceo Wolford, but the rest of the surrounding cast this past year was not up to that caliber. To win 16 games with that ball team, I thought he did an excellent job. I think his abilities to coach defense were overlooked a little bit in the publicity that surrounded Jamestown's success this past year. But I know there were rumblings, and I'm not on the inside down at the high school, so I don't understand what the problems were. But there were people that didn't get along with Ron, and I know he probably, I'm not sure whose fault it was or anything like that. So the resignation was tendered and accepted. And as far as successors, I can mention 3 names here, I think, without revealing anything that isn't already known. I know that Marty Stockwell would be agreeable to accepting the position. We're offered. Marty's a former JV coach there at the high school and heavily involved in Jamestown High School, and I know he would love to have that opportunity. Other names I hear, Ben Drake, who is a former Red Raider basketball player, now working in, as a matter of fact, he's working for Ray Fasciano in a school district in the Rochester area. Yeah, and he's in a position where he took a job as athletic director without knowing that he's not able to coach. They have a rule where if you're AD, you can't coach, and he wants to coach something terrible. And he's a tremendous kid. He really is a good young man. And they couldn't go wrong with a guy like him. I like Ben very much. Get to see him this summer. He comes back for the 3-on-3 over in Bemis and things like that. The other name it's been mentioned several times is Fredonia's Dave Polichetti. Dave has some Jamestown ties. He has family here, and he also would love, I know, to come down here. I also understand there's a social studies opening at the high school, which is obviously a factor. You don't just go get a coach anymore. You have to have a job for him too, and whatever the coach's specialty may be, phys ed or health is obviously the usual one, and they're not always openings there. So those 3 names I've heard, and I don't know, have you heard any more?
No, but the whole coaching staff is gone.
Yeah.
David Malik resigned, so that's Tim Tebow. So they got to start from the ground up. Mark Slake might be a possibility as a JV coach. His son is going to go to the high school next year.
I know Mark was down at every Jamestown game this year. He was. In fact, he got around.
Wally Carlson, I think that's a stretch, but Wally Carlson probably not going to be back at Maple.
Yeah.
And
Wally would love to be back, but he doesn't want to teach anymore.
I understand that there is a phys ed opening too at the high school, and they might. I don't know if they want to hire a man or a woman.
Yeah.
It depends.
What we heard is that it would go to a woman probably to balance things out, but who knows? Those are inner workings that we're not privy to, and we shouldn't be. Let's face it. I mean, those are decisions that we have nothing to do with. We just report them.
How about your time with the Buffalo Bills?
Great years, great years. 1960, when Buffalo started its franchise, the old rock pile. Fond memories. I started.
What was your relationship with him?
I was public address announcer from 1960 until 1972, and those were the years at the rock pile. And then when they moved to the new stadium, they wanted somebody who was not living 75 miles away. They wanted somebody who could do luncheons and PR work and work in their office too. So we kind of came to a parting. But those were great years. I mean, those were the championship years in the mid-'60s, 64 and 65. And then they lost in 66 in the championship game to Kansas City, which would have had a victory there, would have put them in the first Super Bowl. And maybe the way it turned out, I'm just as glad they didn't win. But those were great teams. I mean, they had excellent talent there. And I still think those teams with Tom Sustak and guys like that, and Ron McDowell, and those teams could have played in the National Football League and done very, very well. But it was it was a fun atmosphere because of the ballpark. And that was a one-of-a-kind stadium down there. And not only for football, but they made it into some kind of baseball park as well, and made Robert Redford famous. But the Bills in those years were not they didn't spend a lot of money on staff. And I started out in 1960 working for $50 a game. And in 1972, I was making $50 a game. And they had a system in the press box at War Memorial Stadium where there were 40 seats across the front row, and then they had a row behind us. And I had the 2 seats for a spotter and myself over in the far corner as you come in. And they used to put down name tags for the visiting press, if it were New Yorkian or whatever team would come in. And they'd put the names down, and they use those stick-on things like "Hello, my name is" that you put on at parties. So they put those down for each game, but the two at my end, they figure these are the same two, so they left them there all year. Now, we had mustard stains on those things, and, and ketchup from the hot dogs, and they never changed them the whole season. It's a nickel apiece, right, or something like that, and they never, but those were fun years, Russ. They really were. I worked with a guy named Bob Mergenhagen, who was my spotter. He was also a golf partner of mine, and he was a guy I found that would work for nothing and show up every week. I started out with a couple guys, and they said, sure, they'd love to do it, and then, I get a call on Sunday morning saying, well, I can't be there today, so I can't have that, and Bob was the Mergenhagen meat family in Buffalo in years gone by. That was his business, and a terrific kid, and he was very reliable. He worked with me for, out of those 12 years, 11 of those years he worked with me, so it was fun. Those were great years. And I'm a Bills fan forever.
Did you get access to the guys? I mean, before the game, your locker room access, or did you just basically do your job?
Oh, either sometime, depending on who was down there. Yeah. I heard some wild stories about when the Jets would come to town with Joe Namath. I guess he never goes to bed the night before a game, the way they tell it, because Paul McGuire used to have a bar on Cleveland Drive in Buffalo. Sestak and McGuire's. Tom Sestak and he were partners. And Namath would always go there the night before the game, and I guess they just never got home. In fact, the year that the Bills drafted O.J. Simpson, they only won one game, and they that was against the Jets, and it was the year the Jets won the Super Bowl. And he threw 5 INTs in that game, too, so that tells you something about resting up the night before. Probably a good idea in most cases.
That was before McGuire had that bar. He wasn't playing then,
Yeah.
He was?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He was a punter. He was a linebacker, too, he'll tell you, but mostly a punter.
We went out there one night.
They stole Jack Kemp in those years from San Diego for $100.
$100.
Yeah, incredible story. How an organization can let that happen, But those were different years too. Organizations weren't anywhere near what they are now in pro sports. They had one guy who handled public relations, and believe me, he worked his tail off. Chuck Burr was the guy I worked with for a long time. And he was a terrific person. He did more for that organization for less recognition than anybody I've ever worked with. Jack Horrigan was also a Bills PR guy, very highly regarded sports writer in those years. And those were fun years. I mean, I grew up with Western New York media. Chuck Healy lived around the corner from us, and Foster Brooks was a very close friend of our family when he was in the Buffalo area. Buffalo Bob Smith worked with my dad for years, and people like that. So it was a fun. Like I said earlier, you can't grow up under better conditions than I had. I had it made. And when you get free tickets to everything, you can't go wrong. I'll tell you another thing that sticks out in my mind growing up, and that's the college basketball programs on Saturday nights down at Memorial Auditorium. Those were unbelievable. Every top team in the country came through Western New York on their way or coming home from the Garden, and they played doubleheaders, and we were competitive. I mean, Canisius, Niagara, and Bonnie were competitive with those teams. And those doubleheaders were just outstanding at the odd. In fact, when I was going to school at Colgate, I used to come home almost every weekend when there would be a good doubleheader on. It was worth the ride, and in most cases, it was great basketball.
Was broadcasting always in your career? Was that something?
It was something that I really hadn't specifically planned on until I graduated from Colgate. I was kind of toying with a couple of other ideas, and as we get past 1 o'clock and I see who's able to take longer than 1 hour lunch hours, there were some jobs I should have got into, I think. I guess in the back of my mind, it was always it was always, I always used to go to games, and I tell young sportscasters this, if you're going to a game as a spectator, you know, take a tape recorder along and pretend you're doing the game, you know, do some, because you can put it through your mind and say, I'd be saying this and I'd be saying that, but until you actually do it and listen to it back on tape and things like that, you don't realize, you know, what it takes, and the obvious thing is player identification, and that's the first thing you got to learn how to do. If you can't do that, you're not going to make it. By the time you look down for a player's number, it's too late. If you don't have his name in your mind when it's happening, especially in basketball, the ball changes hands so quickly that you just have to have the names right there. And I guess I had, yeah. You know, when I think back, I took a couple of job interviews doing other things, and it just didn't do anything for me. When the opportunity to get into radio came up, I said, well, why not? You know, give it a try. It's $1 an hour in those years, $40 a week, and didn't get a lot better now.
Hear about how it was working 10 years with Skip Pierce and what Skip is doing now.
Yeah, I can do that. First of all, let me say Bob Finley was my first partner. I inherited Bob. He worked with Dave Hunter on some games before I came to town here, and Bob and I had a great relationship. 20 years together, play-by-play, and he was well in various other things as far as employment goes. He wasn't a radio announcer by trade, and yet he made the effort to come, if he was out of town driving truck, he did that for a while to make sure he got home in time for the broadcast. He didn't miss games. He was ready. He was prepared. And I really enjoyed. He was knowledge, local knowledge. He had it all, and I enjoyed working with Bob. And when that came to an end, Skip was next in line, and that was the next 10 years of my stint here. Skip was a guy who kind of came to us as an unknown. As a matter of fact, he's been everywhere. You mentioned a city in this country, and he's lived there for a while. I don't know how he could have done that, but he's been around. New England, Chicago, Florida. He's been all over. He went to school briefly in Florida, and we just hit it off immediately. And there again, nobody was dedicated more to local sports and local kids than Skip. I mean, he made an effort. He'd be at the game an hour and a half before the game started. I'd get there, and he'd be sitting there. Equipment's all set up. He's reading the paper, getting ready for the broadcast, talking to the players, and he was just great. I really miss him, and it's not the same since he left. He's doing great in Florida, not in radio, and currently has fallen in love, and he's talking about getting married in November. We were down there just about a month ago and had a chance to go to a Texas Ranger game against Cincinnati there in Sarasota, and had a great time. He's just doing well. Whatever happened worked out for the better, because he's happy, and that's the way it should be for him.
The first time I ever heard Skip, I thought he was from Texas. But he was born in Brattleboro, Vermont.
Yeah.
About 50 miles from where I used to live. And I never would have dreamed that he was from New England. But yeah, he lived all over. His dad was in the service. So
Yeah.
They lived in Albany, Chicago, you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But he went to the same college that Tom O'Reilly did, I guess. Western Illinois.
Yeah, out in Illinois, right? Yeah. Remember when that came up? Yeah. And well, you'll agree, he was for the kids. He really was.
Yeah, we missed Skip.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
I know how much he missed.
He did become a legend in Babe Ruth baseball across the nation.
Whoa.
What were some of those week-long marathons like?
Awesome. They were the greatest. Should have mentioned that earlier, because there's nothing like that. I talked about JCC playing in a week-long event in the same place, and in this case, we even got obviously more heavily involved because we did all the games, no matter how many there were, 16 or 17, and to be able to broadcast. I wish I had kept track of how many radio stations picked up our broadcast, because we had a lot, and a lot of great reaction from all parts of the country. There were a couple that I'm not too happy with. They haven't paid us yet. But and I don't get paid till Merrill does. So I still got a couple $100 coming from last World Series. But anyway, it was great just meeting the people and, you know, going to the picnic and introducing myself. How do you pronounce these names? And the coaches were, at that point in the week, were just getting to know the area and to see their reaction and how great they thought Jamestown and the area, surrounding area. I remember the California team last year in there, and they were in Mayville, and they just absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved everything. Of course, they won too. That made it a little better. But great experience. And again, Bob Finley was part of the early years, and when we started in 1980, and Skip came along and did a great job. And then this past year, we used kind of guest announcers on the color part of it. And Bob Schmidt did most of the games and did a wonderful job for us. We got a lot of requests for tapes. We got it was a wonderful experience, and to meet all the terrific people in Babe Ruth. You can't say enough about it, but no other community.
How do you discipline yourself to stay up? Every single game seemed like the only game, the most important game played. How do you discipline yourself?
I guess I felt that way. I don't think it's something you can fake. I really, and that's why I'm still doing games. If I get up one day and I got a game that day and I said, geez, I don't really want to go and do that game, then it's time for me to more than semi-retire. Retirement is great. You know, I really, somebody asked me on the way in, am I adjusting to this? And I said, boy, am I ever. I played golf 10 times in April already here. So that's that's wonderful. I just hope all the young people here will keep working so I don't lose my Social Security. I do need that. Keep your day jobs and keep contributing. But I think that's just because I felt that way. And obviously, when you get a game, say you're sending back to Texas or you're sending it to wherever it may be, that gets you involved as well, because you know you're doing a job for more than just the Jamestown area. You're doing a job for somewhere else. And in a lot of cases, we were doing both teams, and that kept us neutral. It was hard to, other than when Jamestown played, of course. There was no such thing as favoritism. And I don't claim to be, an impartial announcer. I don't think people listen to Jamestown football to hear me raving about Orchard Park. And, I am the most biased local announcer in the country probably, unless Frewsburg's playing Maple Grove or something, then I can't be. And I don't make any claims to be impartial. But Babe Ruth was just a wonderful experience, and thanks to guys like you who had that dream, and all the people who work so hard on a volunteer basis. It was also my best paycheck ever, too. I want you to know that. So there's a lot of things going there when you do 17 games in 1 week.
Gas or lift at the stadium.
Yeah. It's a long haul, and especially when you do the double headers are fine, but when you get more than that, I can remember the early years we had 4 games on Sunday, and boy, those were a couple times there. And playing at 1:30 in the morning. And all, but you just get involved and get interested, and I think Babe Ruth week is one where it gets easier, not harder. You may think the other way. You may think you're tired and you're not going to be as sharp or anything like that. But what happens is you know that you start to know the players. When they first come in, you're doing the first game. You don't know anybody from any. They're just names. They're names on a roster you're given, and once you get to know the kids and know the strengths and weaknesses of the teams, you can do a better job without even thinking about it, really. It comes to mind that you see a team 5 or 6 times, which it takes to get through that week and win, and by the time they get to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you know them all, you know who's going to be playing where, your lineups are, and our only problem, and it hasn't been a problem thanks to the staff that's compiled there, is getting lineups done. We sometimes run out of time with the post-game show of the first game and a pre-game show of the second game, and there isn't a heck of a lot of time to scribble down the lineups. But it has been that was a learning experience in 1980 out there. We didn't know what to expect, and like you and the committee did. And we've had a ball, and I wish I could think. I was thinking on my way over here this morning about somebody who was on a vacation heading down the East Coast. And they were in the neighborhood of when Frederick, Maryland was playing up here, and we were sending the game back there. And he said he was driving his car. They were going to Florida on vacation. And he turned to his wife and he said, "That sounds like Pete and Bob." And it was. It was us. It was us doing Frederick, Maryland from here, you know, in the early years. I wish I could think of who that was, but I can't. It slips me. Great years, absolutely. And I think everybody's in. You know, I'm involved from one end, and everybody else is a host parent, and they have similar experiences. I don't think I'm unique in this. Everybody loves it. I mean, it's hard work. Let's face it, and it's hard work for everybody involved, not just me. If it comes off like it's come off here in the times we've done it, isn't it worth it?
So as Pete Hubbell looks down the road here, what,
Thank you.
you're in semi-retirement, you really basically play-by-play, which you enjoy. Is there something that you really would like to accomplish, looking forward? Talk a little bit about maybe writing.
Yeah, that would be, you know, the first thing that would come to mind, although had I retired a little earlier, the senior tour, they make a lot of money out there, and if I could just catch on as I hang around somehow. I think the years have passed me by along that line, but yeah, the writing thing has definitely come to mind. I don't have any, you know, I might relocate. I'm not guaranteeing, obviously, staying around here forever. I like the South, and I don't like winter. I can make no bones about that. So when the opportunity, if it should arise, I have some connections in radio in Florida, and that may be a possibility. In fact, it would certainly encourage me if I could reunite with Skip and maybe do some of the same kind of things that we're doing here. They don't do a lot of high school play-by-play down there, which I think is in our favor. I think we could sell them on the idea. It's an idea at JTN that we've had great luck with the way we present it, and that is on a yearly basis. We do football, basketball, and baseball for a group of sponsors called the Boosters, and they get billed per month from September through May. And it's a great concept because the sales department, they do a job for a couple of months, and then they reap the benefits even in the down times, January and February, which are lousy months in radio, and they're still getting billing and commissions, etc. And it's a good way for us because we don't have to read commercials during the games. We do sponsor mentions and talk about the sponsors, but it's a lot easier to do a game when you don't have all these obligations to breaks, commercial breaks and all. And so, you know, if I could sell something like that down south, it's a possibility. Certainly staying around sports somehow. I'll certainly be a spectator, no doubt about that. And, in fact, we've had a chance already to. I visited with Russ one day down at the stadium for a tournament game last week, and it's just fun being there. I just love being around the kids. We had a great story. In fact, in that tournament, a young man who plays for Faulkner as a catcher, Jay Grant, his name is. I was standing down behind the third base dugout there, and they were batting. And he was in the on-deck circle right outside the fence there, and he says, "He's kidding me. I've known him from basketball and football too, and he's kidding me." He says, "This ballpark can't hold me." Now he's about this tall, but he's built good and he's a good athlete. And I said, "Yeah, right." He says, "We'll see, we'll see." So that was the first game they played, and they won. They beat Dunkirk, so they're playing in the championship game against Frewsburg on Wednesday night, a week ago tonight, and we're doing the game, and on the way in, he comes walking in, and I said, "What about this ballpark now?" He says, "We'll see, we'll see." Doesn't he hit a home run? Hit it over the left field fence to the right of the old scoreboard, crushed it. I mean, he hit it right up on the hill there. And he's coming down the third baseline, and he goes up, he looks up at me, and he says, "Give me a little sign." And I mean, it's stories like that make it fun for me, because you get to know these kids, and they're great kids. They really are. And it's just been a tremendous 31 years for me here in Jamestown. I've had chances to go elsewhere, believe me, and I don't know. It would be a heck of a gamble because I'm convinced that I wouldn't find what I had here.
We're glad you came.
Yes.
Me too, believe me. I've had great support at the station. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that. From Cy and Carl in the early years to Merrill now. Whenever I've gone in with an idea of broadcasting said game, I've never been rebuffed immediately. They want to hear about it. They want to, and almost every time we've gone ahead and done it. I mean, sometimes it's expensive to do out-of-town games, and we don't always make a lot of money on them. Especially the smaller schools. There aren't a lot of sponsors in small communities, and when they have success and they're playing 3 or 4 games in a basketball tournament, you begin to deplete the advertising dollar in Frewsburg or wherever it may be. But we go anyway, and we've made the effort, and I'm glad we have. I think we've provided a service that is appreciated here in the community. I feel that way.
One of the things that always impressed me was when you started your evening talk shows. I know how tough it was in the beginning to get people to participate, yet between you and apparently the station, they hung in with it until it became exceedingly an item whichever you wanted to listen to. Must have been tough though those first couple of years when you're kind of talking to yourself for half an hour.
Well, yeah, there are nights even now when that happens, and I'm not there anymore. But a small market talk show is a difficult thing to sustain. There just is not that base out there of people who are going to take time to call. I wish if I got a call from everybody who told me, I listen to your show, but I don't call. And I just try and say, hey, it's painless. You know, it's not like going to the dentist or anything like that. You call and we talk, and I try and make it that way and make it friendly. And I'm certainly of the opinion that Chuck Dickerson, I'm not there to irritate you or stir you up or swear at you or cut you off. I'll listen. If I don't agree, I'll say so. If you don't agree with me, you'll say so. But we don't have to become enemies because of it. And to me, that I can't listen to that. I was happy to read in the paper today that he may be leaving.
Yes, amen.
And I just can't listen to that presentation. It's been fun because of people like Terry and I don't know if you guys remember Mel Johnson, but Mel, old-time baseball fan who grew up in St. Louis, and he saw Babe Ruth play, and he went to the Cardinals games, and he used to be so entertaining when he called. People would just, they'd tell me,